Hello, and welcome to your weekly episode on Shadow Space. If you are on a healing journey, a self discovery journey, or perhaps just into personal and self development, you have definitely found your show. On this show, we like to take deep dives and explore what it means to do the shadow work and also talk about the hidden aspects of our personalities, the parts we often keep buried for reasons that may be known or unknown to us. Kind of juicy, right? Well, I invite you to stick around and find out what this is all about. But in the meantime, I'd like to formally introduce myself. My name is Laura Brown. I am your host, and I am a certified trauma-informed coach, as well as a breathing and meditation coach. Shadow Space was inspired by my own personal struggles through my healing journey that I've been on for a number of years, that I'm still very much on, and all of the discoveries I've made about myself. Listen, some were great, others, not so much. But I've learned the value of integrating every bit and part of these aspects of myself by working through the shadow. So I wanted to create a platform where we can bring these topics to the light, no pun intended, but kinda, and really talk about these often perceived weaknesses, insecurities, unconscious patterns, behaviors, and what have you, that can sometimes hinder us and keep us stuck in life. For anyone who's been on this journey, this path can be very difficult to navigate and sometimes isolating and really lonely. This is how I felt most of my journey. So I wanted to build a sense of community where we can come together and hopefully openly share, support, and empower one another. But most importantly, also learn and feel inspired by each other. That's really the purpose of my show, is to really help you understand that you are not alone and that you are capable of more than you can ever imagine, and nothing is inherently wrong with you, despite what your mind, thoughts, and beliefs may suggest. Okay? So I hope you guys continue to tune in often, and I hope you guys continue to find inspiration through my journey. And I'm also curious about yours, so please do share with me as well. All right, so let's dive into today's topic. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about doing the shadow work, because this is a question I've received a lot as I'm talking to potential clients, friends, family, acquaintances, and what have you. Anytime I say I am a trauma-informed coach and a meditation and breathing coach, and the name of my show is Shadow Space, it always sparks some interest in people and always a question about what shadow work is and what shadow space is. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time sharing my perspective on working with the shadow and how working with the shadow can be extremely helpful and useful, and really the catalyst to your growth. And also wanted to share some practical tools at the end that might be helpful to you guys, and some resources, and also share some feedback and experiences I've had working through my shadow. So let's dive right in. So what is shadow work? Listen, as you guys know, I've been on my healing journey for a number of years, right? And when I began my healing journey, I honestly couldn't say I was doing any type of shadow work, because at the time, shadow work was not really something that was, I don't want to use the word popular, but it was not something that was, gosh, what's the word I'm looking for here? Help me. It was just not talked about often, right? So I was doing my healing work, right? And at the time, if you guys go back and listen to my previous episodes, it was very confusing. And it was a time in my life that was very chaotic when I started on my healing journey. And it was also, not clear what was happening for me in my life. So it almost came in as kind of like an Oh gosh, it was kind of like an uprooting, is the best way to describe it. It's like everything was happening, total chaos, total turmoil. A lot of things were going on. And so when I was led to meditation, I started to do a lot of introspective work, right? Looking within, diving in, doing a lot of self inquiry, realizing certain things about myself, discovering other things, all of the things. And so I really was not aware, though, that there was something a bit deeper than that. So I was just kind of going through the process. And again, even as I was on my healing journey, I didn't know I was on a healing journey. Like, nobody said anything. And quite honestly, I couldn't articulate to anyone what was happening within me internally. Now, let me just stop there and say all of this was somewhat happening internally. And that's the interesting part about healing, is that although there's a lot of changes and a lot of things happening in your life, most of it is so personal and is so internalized that, people around you or people in your life can very rarely pick it up unless they see physical changes or just physical manifestations of what you're going through internally. So again, I couldn't really bring myself to articulate what was happening, but at the same time, I knew there was deeper things that I was working through within myself. Now, how does that relate to the shadow? So when I look back now, after I've done some real shadow work on myself, and I'm still doing shadow work, by the way, I've realized that from the very beginning, I was in the process of uncovering things. I was diving deeper. I was asking questions. I was looking at things. I was, questioning a lot. And I was doing all these self-inquiry things and, just journaling and meditating and doing all the things, that comes with doing the shadow work. And so my understanding of it now is that I've been doing shadow work for a very long time. I just didn't know what to call it, right? And so going back to what shadow work is, it's exactly that. It's really just peeling back the layers and taking a deeper dive and a deeper look within yourself to see where are certain parts of yourself perhaps working well and where are certain parts of yourself not really in alignment, right? So it's important, right, to make this distinction between, just self-reflection, for example, and doing shadow work. Shadow work is a lot deeper. It's a lot more involved. It's a lot more, profound, right? You are going deep, deep, deep within layers and perhaps even sparking memories within yourself that may have laid dormant for so long, things that you have forgotten completely, things that you had just learned to cope with and to live with and to exist with and to survive with, right? These things get brought up to the surface so you can take a hard look at them and really examine and explore and then learn to see how these things are either supporting you on your journey or not supporting you. So that's what the shadow work is. Shadow work is just a deep inquiry of the self where you are looking at all parts of yourself, the repressed parts, the insecurities, maybe the fears, the doubts, worries, anxieties, things of that nature, the unconscious patterns, your behaviors, the repeated cycles that you have probably unconsciously been on and repeating for your entire life that may not even be helping you. So that's the purpose of the shadow work. And when I now do my shadow work, I have a shadow work journal. I think most people who are doing shadow work now have a specific shadow work journal that may even have prompts and questions and, ways you can journal specifically for your shadow, which is so helpful. But when I started, I didn't have that. I was just kind of doing my own journaling, right? And just really learning to put things out on paper and express myself that way and share that, and be really honest and vulnerable that way. So shadow work is that. It's really taking a hard look at yourself and really doing that deep inquiry. Deep inquiry. Now, with that being said, in my experience, I don't know that shadow work. Well, I take back my comment. I didn't even say it, but what I was going to say is, when it comes to shadow work, now there are a lot of shadow work journals, and it's a very it's talked about quite frequently, right? When you look at social media, there are other coaches and people out there who specialize in doing shadow work, which is beautiful. It's amazing, because I honestly believe that the more of us who can do this work, the more of us who are willing, I should say, not can, who are willing to do this work, the more we can feel not only empowered within ourselves to know that there's nothing wrong with us, but also we can empower other people to want to be curious about it and perhaps want to do it for themselves, right? So the way I arrived at shadow work was not in my own will. It wasn't something I decided to do. It was a guidance that led me there that I am eternally grateful for, because it's been the most life-changing experience for me. And I am so proud and so grateful for all of the lessons I've learned along the way and all the things I had to go through to really discover the deeper meaning of things within myself, but also to be able to articulate that and hopefully help others who may be traveling a similar path, right? So, now when I look at shadow work, that's what is different. It's that it is talked about a lot, and there are tools that are available to begin doing this work, which is wonderful. It's a beautiful thing, and it's really something that can help guide people who are interested in taking this deeper dive, and also who are interested in who are interested in taking this journey. It's really amazing, right? When you have the tools to be able to do that. But shadow work, the concept of shadow work actually was founded by the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung. For those of you who are familiar with his work, he is just brilliant. He's a brilliant mind who's, studied the mind for a number of years. And he introduced the concept and the idea of the shadow, right? And the different archetypes of our personality. And, also is known for so many impactful quotes, like the one on my website, which is one of my all-time favorite, which is, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will continue to direct your life, and you will call it fate." And I love that quote so much, because it is so true, right? The things that we don't know about ourselves, we just assume that's just how we are. And granted, yes, sometimes that's just how we are. There are certain things about ourselves that sometimes, no matter how much we want to change, we can change them. It is what it is, and this is how we are. But there are certain things that we are so empowered to be able to change. But until we know what they are, we can't do that work. We would just continue to assume that that's just how we're wired. And so this is why I love that quote, because it is so true, right? To our capability of being able to change, transform, and evolve and grow. But we have to understand the root cause of the things that keep us stuck, or that are hindering us, or the things that kind of get in our way. So he came up with the concept of the shadow and the archetype personalities. And so my shadow work journal is based on Carl Jung's studies, actually. So I did not buy the ones that were circulating online. There were so many circulating online at one point on TikTok that everybody was using. I don't know if they were based on his studies or his work. I actually am, now I'm curious to know, so I might go and get one. But, so the important thing here to say is that doing the shadow work, no matter how you arrive there, is one of the most critical aspects of growth. Because while we're going through the journey of doing the shadow work, we may not see it as such, right? It may be very, very challenging. It may be difficult because quite literally, I don't know anybody in this world who wants to wake up one day and volunteer themselves to share all of their shortcomings and face them and want to do the work and look at their perceived weaknesses and confront their shadow and do all these things. I quite literally don't know anybody, and that includes myself. This is why I think sometimes it takes a divine guidance to get us there, because we are meant for more and we are all capable of so much more. But sometimes it takes a hard push or something that can be painful, right? That serves as the gateway to get us there, to get started in doing this work. But no matter how well-intending you are on your self-development or personal development, I still don't think that this is something that people voluntarily want to do, okay? However, the tools are available now for anybody who's curious or interested in doing this. I was curious when I started, right? When I started, I was always curious to see where this path was going to lead me. And I quite literally didn't know it was going to lead me here, but I just was curious to see how far I would go within myself to discover things about myself. So I was totally open to the journey, and I was always willing to explore and take deeper dives. But it's really a process, and it takes a lot of strength and courage, because a lot of things are revealed when you do the shadow work. Some things are not always pleasant. Some things can spark a lot of pain and a lot more, can bring up old wounds, right? That we have even forgotten about, can bring up some traumatic experiences. I just want to be really honest and real about it. Some things can be very, very debilitating, right? When you are confronted with it, depending though on what has happened in your life and your experiences. We're all different. Not everybody's been through extreme things in life. Some have, some haven't, and that's just what life is. That's just what it boils down to. So when we are doing shadow work, I think it's important to invite a level of openness, right, to this space, because again, a lot of things get revealed and a lot of things are exposed, and a lot of things can be very difficult to navigate by yourself. Okay? So I just wanted to highlight what shadow work is and what the purpose of shadow work is as you are taking on this journey, or as you are embarking on this journey, because it is not linear. It is quite literally one of the most challenging things you'll ever do for yourself, but also the most rewarding thing you can ever do for yourself, because I am here now. Many years later, I can look back at everything I've been through when I started thus far, and I'm really, really proud of the progress. But I'm also a lot more, I realize a lot more things. I guess the word is, I'm more aware now of why things had to happen the way they did. And I am learning to be more accepting of it. And that's really all thanks to my work through the shadow work, and also so many other things, right? And so many people have inspired me along the way. But that's what the shadow work is. It's really just learning to do the self-inquiry and take taking these deeper dives within yourself, which will lead you, right, to a place of self-discovery. This is what self-discovery comes from, because you learn that as you're doing your shadow work, perhaps a lot of things that you have believed about yourself might not necessarily be true. And you also learn that there is more to you. There's more to you as a person, as a human being. There's more to your layers as a person. And so you learn that, okay, perhaps you have to learn to let go of certain ideas and beliefs that you've had about yourself, and then evolve into this new person that you are becoming, who was always there, by the way, but was probably masked with layers and wounding and just things that have happened in your life. So I hope this was helpful to kind of share what the purpose of shadow work is and what shadow work is, because I know it can be really confusing, and it's not something that people want to even volunteer, and I work with a lot of people who, even when you start the first conversation, everybody wants to hide certain things about themselves, because it's just a natural inkling that I think we all have, that we don't want other people to see us in any other way than we see ourselves, which, sometimes we want people to see only the best in us. And granted, yes, why would you show anything other than the best of you? You wouldn't. But when you hide behind certain things that are not helpful, then this is what leads to you repeating certain cycles or engaging in behaviors that don't serve you, and also sometimes even projecting that onto others unfairly, right? Because what we're not aware of, we really can't help ourselves with, let alone help others, right? So when we become this projecting machine that's always blaming others, playing a victim because for us, others did it to us, that type of mentality, it doesn't help us grow. It doesn't help us evolve in life. It keeps us stagnant and stuck where we are, right? In order for us to gain that momentum, right, or the opportunities, it lives in the shadows. It's where we don't want to touch. It's these parts of us that we repress. It's these parts of us that we unconsciously don't know. These are the parts of us we need to learn to become familiar with, right? Even if we don't want to face them right away, if that's too much, we need to learn to become familiar with these parts of us so that we can begin this integration work, right? Integrating all aspects of our personalities, right? The positives and the perceived negatives. These are all very important in making us who we are as a unique person, as our blueprint, because there's no two people alike in this world, right? None of us have someone else who's exactly as we are. We are wired the way we are. We are the way we are. And we have our unique blueprint along with that. So learning to integrate all these parts of us is what will help us, right, see that uniqueness and help us celebrate it as something better, something good, not something bad, right? So that's the purpose of doing the shadow work. When you have, now a new understanding, a new insight about yourself, and you see the bigger picture, right? And you begin to understand that you are more than meets the eyes. You are more than meets the physical. It opens up a whole new pathway. And quite honestly, this is what aligns you to your infinite abundance, right? This is how you become this person who knows that there are no limits, there are no barriers to who you are and what you can achieve in this life. So it's really, really the catalyst for our growth, and it can really propel us to levels that you could never imagine, right? And so I'm not sitting here advocating that everybody wakes up tomorrow and starts doing the shadow work. But I'm here to say that for those who are interested in learning, about themselves, gaining a deeper understanding, or perhaps want to evolve or are looking for changes in their life or feel stuck somewhere, right? This is always a great place to start. And as I said, now tools are available, so you don't even have to wait. You can start doing the shadow work by just getting a shadow work book journal and starting to ask yourself these questions and doing these exercises with yourself. But the other important thing with the shadow work is that we need to understand that it requires a level of solitude to do this work. We have to be willing to be alone for a little bit. Now, again, I'm not suggesting that you disconnect your life and go off the grid and, and get lost in nature for years. But it is so important to learn to acquire grounding techniques, right? Whatever your preference is, it could be any kind of mindfulness practice of your choice, whether you're into meditation or you like journaling or you like going for walks or painting or singing or writing, whatever your preference. It's important to integrate, right, some level of mindfulness and to find some level of solitude and aloneness, because it's really important to do that for yourself, right? I have found my best work in my aloneness. And I used to dread it before, because to me, being alone before meant that I was disconnected and I had all these negative perceptions about being alone. But I have gained a whole new respect for silence and for solitude. And those things are so sacred for me. I love, love, love both of those things as an avenue to begin to do this self-inquiry and deep inquiry and self-exploration exercise. It requires you to disconnect a little bit so that you can go within and begin to ask yourself these deeper questions. And also, what I find to be extremely helpful is, asking yourself, learning to ask yourself, rather, empowering questions. The type of questions that will lead to answers that are deeper and meaningful, right? The type of questions that will yield deeper answers, not the why is this happening to me type of questions, because those are more centered around the victim mindset. Why me? Why is this happening to me? But rather, questions like, what is trying to emerge in my life? What am I learning in this stage in my life? Questions like that. All the empowering questions that you can think of that will spark perhaps an idea within you to continue that self-exploration and that self, just examination, right, within yourself. So all the questions, learn to ask empowering questions, because that will lend itself to some truth. And this is also why I say it's important to find some level of quietude in your life, some level of solitude, because we can't do this work when we're so busy running around, answering our phone, going to parties, socializing 10 times a week. And again, not suggesting anybody lives their life the way I think it should be happening, because that's not the idea here. The idea is find something that works for you, but here's kind of the framework, right? The framework is you need some level of silence in your life. No matter how you achieve that, you need some level of solitude or quietness. No matter how you achieve that, you need some level of Yeah, I said that. I said silence and quietness. And you also need to learn to ask these empowering questions of yourself, because those are the questions that are going to lend themselves to the deeper answers. Okay. So, with all that being said, I just wanted to share my perspective on the shadow work and my journey, my story with you guys, so that hopefully it can inspire you in some way. But if you take anything away from this show, I want you to understand that, doing the shadow work is so vital and crucial to you coming into a oneness, a level of wholeness with yourself, and also understanding that there's nothing inherently wrong with you. Nothing inherently wrong with you. Just because you discover things about yourself that you may not like, or things about yourself that you have repressed, doesn't mean these things are wrong. It just means that you have to learn to become more aware of these things and learn to give these things also the same amount of compassion and love that you give all the other parts of yourself that you love. Because that is how you can show up in the world as your true self, as your authentic self, and also inspire other people to do the same. When we can show up as our authentic self, then we can make a way for others to do the same, right? And so we have to challenge ourselves to do this work for ourselves. This is not for somebody else. This is not for our spouse, a partner, our friends, our family. This is for ourselves, because we are capable of so much more. We are infinite potential, and we can do so many wonderful things in this world. But sometimes we get in our own way. And until we know why we get in our own way, we can't get unstuck. And so this is what the shadow work does for us. This is the power of the shadow work. So I invite you guys, right, to continue on this path of self-inquiry and deep inquiry, and really challenge yourself, right? Maybe it's not everything at once. Maybe you want to tackle just one thing for a month, perhaps, or you want to look at two things that you are, interested in working on with yourself, maybe for the next 2 to 3 months, right? Just whatever it is, I encourage you to continue to dig deeper and to find, these answers. These answers are so important, and they're only meaningful when they come from you. And I always say this, the breakthroughs are only meaningful when they come from you. Okay? All right, guys. So that is it for the show today. I'm going to leave you guys here, and I will see you next week with my next episode. All right. See you soon, guys. Bye.